Hey, today I'd like to talk about something that I think isn't talked about too much. I think, at least it's my perception, um, and that's whether everyone, all of us, we seek for better future, better job, better everything. Um, but the question is, are we strong enough? Are we actually the person that can hold on to whatever we're seeking? Are we strong enough to hold on to it if it came our way? If it suddenly appears tomorrow, can you hold it? Are you able to keep it? Do you have the skills? Are you the person that fits what your dreams are made of? Um, and that kind of came out of a reflection, or more like an acknowledgement, a gratitude. And that comes for me in circles about things that didn't come through, didn't come true in the past for me. And there's this gratitude for, there's this realization, oh my god, if that would have happened, like, I didn't want that, I wasn't ready for that, I wouldn't have been able to hold on to it, or I'm almost like a different person, like it doesn't fit me. And the thing I'm actually wanting, um, based on my recent evolution, like, I wouldn't have been able to hold on to whatever I'm seeking. Um, and it comes back to the to kind of what I put in the title of one of my past posts. Alice in Wonderland. Are you Alice? Alice goes through all these challenges and changes, and at the end, it's almost like a heroine's journey. At the end, she is Alice. She's the one that um, that is strong enough to pass the final test, because before that she wasn't. Um, and it's almost like a seeking for that identity. Um, I think we're all in that place where we want a heroine's journey where we seek that identity. So sometimes we know what that is, or we have an idea of what that is. Sometimes less so, but we're still aiming for something typically, or at least you listening to me, you probably have that sense of, you see that something wants to come through, that you want to re-embody what you know you are. But when I go through these phases where I'm glad things didn't pan out, I'm glad things didn't come true. Um, it's always like a double-edged sword for me. There's this elation, right? This really grateful state, this gratitude that comes through, like, oh my god, I thank god I didn't get that job, or I didn't reconnect with that person, or whatever it is. You're just glad that it didn't happen. And like, the only thing that comes through is, rejection is God's protection. You're like, that rings so true in those moments, because you realize, oh, there was something preventing me for getting that, and it knew better. It knew better than me, because I wanted something, but deep inside, whether it's my higher self, subconscious, whatever it is, it's God. Say like, no, 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 you're not supposed to get that. Remember, and then you catch up to that, and then you're so grateful that it didn't happen, that you got rejected, because you actually didn't want that. I mean, your lower self wanted it, but not your higher self. So there's this deep gratitude for what happened, but then there's also like kind of a dread, like this kind of sinking feeling in the stomach, because it happens over and over again, at least in my life. and then you're almost fearful of all the things you don't know. Like, well, if it happens so frequently, and every single time I thought, oh yeah, now I'm ready, and I want to X, Y, and Z, and now I'm really ready for the next phase of my life. Then comes the dread of, well, if it happened again, and the last time I thought, no, this time I definitely know, and this time I'm definitely ready for the higher part of my life. Suddenly you're thinking, well, it's probably gonna happen all again. I mean, it's likely that's gonna happen again in the future, and then there's this dread of like, oh my god. Instead of the analogy would be, instead of like, oh yeah, constantly see the end of the end of the tunnel, and then oh my god, now it's getting brighter, brighter. Okay, it's the end of the tunnel, and no, it's not, because it's just like another bend in the path, right? So you're like, I'm there, and then path takes a bend, and then there's another straight in front of you, and what you perceive now as the light might be another bend, and you don't know how many bends are left. So there's this dread, this dreadful feeling of, oh. So one part of you is really happy, but the other one's kind of dreading what might be next. And so, and I'm basically talking to myself here. This is kind of a self-reflection type of thing, and the conclusion to that is, well, forget about all that. Like, you need to go back to the present moment. That's the only salvation in that case. Instead of just thinking about the future, oh, is it the light or is it another turn? And so, don't, you're in the future. It's the mind that thinks that, or the mind that actually is dreading what might lie ahead. So, solution for that, just stay in the present moment. Just disconnect from that mental grind of, oh, I need to plan for it, or is it over soon? Like the quote from Rumi, which is a landing page on my website. I know you're tired, but come, this is the way. Everyone's bloody tired. I'm bloody tired, and I'm listening to that higher self saying, come, I know the way, come, I'm leading you to the end destination. And the higher self is detached from that linear timeline, so it's, the way is actually not the linear way, but the way is actually to disconnect from it. That's the only path to get back to the present moment and be able to detach yourself from outcomes or whatever may lay ahead. So, and then you're more like in a grateful state again, that kind of dreadfulness of, how much longer do I have to go through this shit, like, when can I finally rest? And that's just the mental thing. You can rest right now by disconnecting from that mental linear way of thinking. That's the only way. It's the only salvation to such a situation. And it's really like straddling both worlds, right? Because you cannot really fully 100% disconnect from the mental plane. I mean, this is how we reincarnated. We know we're humans. We have a brain, and it's never going to stop working. Of course, you can do all the meditation you want, but that's just, you're not gonna like live in meditation. You're not living in meditation. You're living while in connection with other people. You're living in the outside world with everything that happens around you. So you cannot just be in constant meditation unless you choose to become a recluse and go in a monastery and do that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, of course, but certainly not my path, or not my higher calling. And so you need to juggle those. You need to bridge those worlds. You need to live in that uncomfortable being, one side deeply rooted in the non-linear, in your high mind, but then having also a foot planted solidly in the physical world, where you might have to expose yourself to your mental processes. Like the clouds. The clouds, you just watch them, but you don't hold on to them. You don't try to catch them, or you don't try to analyze them too much. So you're kind of straddling both worlds. And it's a challenging way to live your life, but it's if you have a higher calling, that's this uncomfortable position that you need to get comfortable with. Get comfortable with the discomfort of not being completely immersed in the physical world, but not completely be gone either. Where you're in la la land and you're actually not connecting to anything or anybody. What's the point of reincarnating at that stage if you do that? At least that's my perspective. And so in that process, it's really about remembrance of who you are. Because if you're straddling that, you're obviously quite aware of what your physical properties and identity are. That's obviously quite straightforward. You can even ask someone on the street and they're going to tell you a few basic characteristics of yourself. But it's really that you need to intensify your definition of your higher self. Can you remember who you are? Do you have a taste for that energy? Can you define it properly? Because if you can mostly define only your physical self, and your higher self is something vague, intangible, you cannot really. Of course, it is always going to be to some extent intangible because it's in higher realms. But what I mean with that is, do you sense it? Can you sense it as powerfully as you sense your physical self? That's the point. Can you feel that energy? Not necessarily having to define it, because words are very, very limiting. But can you sense it fully? Bathe in it. Like, can you sense that? That's the most important thing, because then you can really be stably anchored in that, and let it anchor you when all the rest kind of is running amok, in physical life, or is nothing can grasp on because your next step is not entirely visible. You don't know where the path leads. And so when you do that and you straddle both worlds, and you can really, you can fully embody, at least temporarily, like that energy, that higher energy, whether it is on meditation or whether it is not necessarily meditation, but you're outside in nature and you reconnect with what your energy is, that beautiful energy that you represent. When you do that, it gives a tremendous amount of relief, because this is actually the main goal. At least for me. I have, of course, these purely physical wishes and dreams. I would like to, want to have a big business around spiritual way showing, helping people, having clients that want to engage with me, and just being able to pour out my energy. That's the only goal I have, to actually be that channel and make a life out of it, because you need to pay bills. So although that I have those physical dreams, when I truly take the time to bask in my own energy, all of that kind of falls away, because I realize that this is what it's about. This is all it's about. All the rest is just icing on the cake. It's just, once you remember who you are and you bask in that energy, and you have that It comes down to an energetic intelligence. Some people, you ask them to meditate, you ask them to do all sorts of things. They don't have this acknowledgement. They don't actually realize what they're doing. They don't have that. Oh, when I do that, I'm actually getting in touch with my own energetic signature. There's not this acknowledgement because they're still in. Everything is viewed from a mental process point of view. They don't disconnect it and then suddenly realize, oh, they don't feel that. But when I do, this is all I can ever ask for, because there's this instant realization, God, this is what I am? Like, who gives a shit about all the rest? Literally. Of course, there are practical aspects, and yeah, it would suck to be somewhere homeless on a street. I mean, you can still bask in your own energy. You have enough people. If you go to India, you have enough people on the side of the road that are in that blissful state. They don't give a shit. They're getting fed because it's some kind of half recognized as a that there is actually value to that. But in Western countries, not so much. But that's not really my goal. I really have that. My dream is to have that connection between that higher mind purpose and the physical outer reflection of that state. But when I am in that state, it surpasses anything else I could ever imagine. All the fear is gone. I don't need to achieve anything. So that's really the goal in and of itself. That the achievement of the goal stresses you out. You go back. It forces you into the present moment. The present moment actually shows you, hey, dummy, you're stressing out about achieving something, but you don't realize you are already it. Of course, there's this outward manifestation of it, and it would be great if it happens, but that pales in comparison to the actual thing that you're realizing if you're in that energy. So the achievement of that actual thing teaches you that, hey, dummy, like, what are you doing? You're stressing out about absolutely nothing. And that's coming back to the initial query, are you strong enough to hold your dreams? Are you able to energetically hold your dream life? If it would be handed to you tomorrow, are you gonna fuck it up, or are you actually be able to live in it and hold it? Are you it? Are you Alice? Can you pass the last challenge? Are you strong enough? And you are only if you have fully identified with who you are. So it's this kind of it's like this saying, you get what you want when you don't need it anymore. That is so true when it comes to that. When you fully realize who you are, and with that comes the acknowledgement, everything physical pales in comparison to it gives you relief. Like you're not afraid about death anymore. You're not afraid about what's going to happen in this lifetime anymore. So everything else is secondary to that. So if you're in that state, then that's the state where you can hold everything, the outer reflection of what that is. So not only are you going to attract it, but you will be able to hold it. So in that state where you don't give a shit about anything, or less so than before, that's exactly kind of the state where then you can enjoy it. You can hold it. It's going to come in, so you're going to attract it. You will be able to hold it, and that's the entire purpose. To not needing it anymore. So if you feel that you're so stressed about manifesting, you're so stressed about achieving anything in this physical life, go back to the present moment. Go back to your energetic signature. Go back to yourself. Try to remember who you are. Anything else is secondary to that. Anything else will fall into place once you master that. And I know it's difficult because the mind hates that. The mind's like, because my mind's like that. My mind's like, okay, has all the plans, right? Everything's planned out. Okay, so ideally, of course, all of it is bullshit, right? It loves to put pictures and images and dollar signs on things because that's what it does, the mind. And it already, because it's still kind of linked to your higher self, so part of that manifestation is of course realizing that you kind of already have it, right? And so the having already outer manifestation, your mind, it's like when you buy something in a store or you get a gift or something, there's this joy of receiving something, there's physical joy of achieving something. And coming back to the fact that, well, if you're rooted in your higher self and you don't need it anymore, the mind somehow thinks that, well, if I do that, which is the process of actual manifestation, the energetic embodiment over everything else, well, if I do that, well, then it's going to take all the joy of when it actually arrives physically. That's what the mind thinks. It almost self-sabotages you because it says like, hang on, that can't be the right technique. Because if I do that, well, it takes away all the pleasure. I'm gonna receive it when I don't need it anymore. Hang on, that's messed up. I don't want that. I want to need it and I want to have it, and then I'm gonna have the full joy of actually receiving it because I needed it so much. And that's the issue. That's where the mental aspect is a hurdle because it sabotages the process. Um, and and I guess it's like everything. Just acknowledging that the mind works like that, it's and might be that the mind might be the final hurdle, the final thing to let go, so you can energetically embody and fully attract the outer reflection of your inner identity. Once you understand that, I mean, then comes the difficult process of perhaps bargaining with your mind. I mean, my mind never stops, so I have to find ways to engage with it. Listen, my higher mind being open to, okay, tell me what your fears are. Okay, what's the next one? What's the next one? And what are you afraid of? Um, and and that interaction, and it will be difficult for everyone. Your process might be difficult because the specific characteristics of your mind might be different to mine. So mine is very active. I need to engage with it. Other minds are a bit perhaps less active, and the process is kind of smoother. But mine is a constant. It's constantly active, and for me, the process is really to take a step back. Still let it do its thing, but take a step back and in that state where you are both the higher self and the mind, so you have both the observer and the active mind. So the active mind, although it doesn't like that, it still experiences the higher perspective because it's obviously still you are all of that. You are a complex being, a multi-layered being, and part of it is the lower mind, practical process. You are also the higher mind, so everything is integrated. So the practical mind also experiences that state, that more energetic state. It cannot fully comprehend, but it still experiences it. And if it's logical, but again, logic might not be fully objective, but my mind always prides itself to be logical, coming from a scientific background. Let's just overanalyze everything, blah, blah. So my mind at some stage couldn't do anything else than acknowledge the fact that, okay, if we assume that this is how we perceive reality, and this is the process to achieve it, the mind somehow has to realize, okay, I might have to bug out of this one. It's self-realizing, or that aspect of myself self-realizes that for the sake of the entire identity, I may have to take a step back. And that's an interesting state to be in personally, where you have different aspects of yourself that interact with each other in a very intense way. So it's a highly dynamic system. But one part of it somehow came to the acknowledgement that I have to take one for the team here. I have to take a step back, because otherwise we're not going to achieve our goal. And part of it is, I wouldn't say it's, sometimes I like to think, energetically, a lot of things are similar to dying, where something has to take a step back. To some extent, there's a little bit of a dying process in there. It has to let go. It has to let go of, oh, well, I would have loved to be in that state where I receive things, because then I would have been so joyful. That part of yourself. I'm not talking about the entire self, just the mind. And so that thing that has to be let go of, that true letting go always comes close from an intensity point of view to like a little death process. That mind has to say, yeah, I'm gonna let that go. I have to let it go. Because if I really want that, we're actually never gonna get it, because this is the impediment, this is the hurdle to actually achieving it. So I have to let that go. So it's like having to let go of a relationship, having to let go of anything, of something physical, non-physical. It's a letting go process, which has to be mourned. Energetically, there's like a mourning going on. But this is the process. I'm again, everything is in spirals. It's never complete. So it's what I'm going through right now, where I'm letting go of that aspect of myself which would be so happy physically, joyful if things came in. I need to let go of that, because it's self-sabotaging. I need to go back to the present moment and come back to that realization that I had so often in my life, and I love being in that state. But sometimes the physical world, is so attractive. It just lures me back in, and then there's things happening, events in my life where suddenly I'm lured back in. Oh, why don't you just get that position or that position, and then you can go back into academic science and blah blah. And then I can have goals again. And then I can plan for the next years and shit like that. And my mind loves that. But no. I have to be energetically tuned to my higher self, and only that will attract the events and the people and everything that I need to go forward with. And so, question back to you: Are you strong enough to hold your manifestations? Is there something you pushing forward that has no reason to be? Like, are you trying to force something? Is your mind trying to force something? Do you think you're not going to be happy if you don't have X, Y, and Z? Do you have too specific views of how your outer circumstances should be if you are on your path to your higher manifestations? And do you think that there's something that you need to train for to be strong enough? I need to be strong enough, so I need to do X, Y, and Z, so when it comes in, I'm actually more educated, more this, more that. No, you don't need any of that. You have to go back one level up. As soon as you think you have to do something else to be strong enough to hold your manifestation, it's most of the time a revelation of another hurdle. one level up, be yourself. As Rumi said, bathe in your mind of rubies, you know, like you don't have to go anywhere. Everything is internal right here. Of course, including a higher self, but like it's, in your case, it's like this mental refocusing, changing your brain waves to reconnect to your higher self, and sync back to your energetic signature. And then you realize, first of all, you get lighter. So all these heavy burdens, or I need to achieve, I need to do that, I need to do that, it's all doing instead of being. As soon as you lift back up one level, there's lightness. There's like, oh, yes. Now, of course, the world will drag you down again. Yeah, as soon as your mental eye is being engaged again, of course, it's gonna drag you somewhat down energetically. That's part of reincarnation. You're gonna have that. But the more often you realize that, oh, can I go back up? Can I actually straddle both worlds? Can I be both down and up? And lift off, and kind of really, most of the time, being in a state where you don't feel that constant burden, then you're on your best way to bringing everything in. And then you can hold it, because how can you not hold what you are? It's just an outer manifestation. You are creating your own reality. How can you not hold or be worthy of you? That doesn't even logically make any sense. You know, like if you have a logical mind like mine, just wrestle with those facts. Like, how can you not be worthy or strong enough to hold your? That doesn't even make sense. It's not logical. You just have to re-acknowledge the fact that you're creating your own reality, and what you're going to create is nothing else than yourself. It's just going to be reflected outwardly. So be strong enough by just being yourself. Return to center, return to yourself. All the rest will take care of itself. And I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to myself. You know, this is just self-reflection, which I hope may help some of you. So I hope this helps, and I'll see you in the next one. Much love, everyone.